All right, welcome to Una Faccia, Una Razza. How'd that sound?
Oh,
What'd I do?
dude, not off to a good start. You're Italian. They pronounce their C's faccia, I think.
Faccia,
I could be wrong. Una faccia, una razza.
una faccia, una razza. That's the name of the podcast. Hello, my name is Chris. That's Nick. Welcome everybody. If you're listening, thank you for making it this far. This is gonna be fun. We're gonna have fun. Nick and I, we go way back. We've known each other since we were both 5 years old, and we are
Four, I
now
think. Because you start
four.
kindergarten when you're four, right? And then you
You're right.
turn
Technically,
five.
I was four. Yeah, my birthday was like the first or second day of school, so technically, I was four. And I am now 30. And Nick is 31. So just to give you an idea of how long we've been together, how long we've known each other. So yeah, Nick, you were the one who came up with the name. Do you want to talk a little bit about that and the significance of that title? And you also apparently know how to say it better than I do, so I'll
Yeah.
let you explain that one.
So, una faccia, una razza is an Italian phrase that translates to one face, one race. And it means it's obviously it's Italian, and it means that Italians and Greeks are um, they look the same and they have the same culture. I guess is we're two different countries, but we're very similar in our culture and even the way that we look. And Chris is Italian, Sicilian specifically, and let's go
That's right.
and I'm half Greek, and so it works. We got one face, one race, look a little similar, I guess.
Yeah, I
And
think so. We got similar facial hair going on. I think your hair is a little longer than me right now. I am not wearing a Disney hat, but otherwise, when you look at us, you should see the same person, basically, because we have a lot of shared experiences together, and we have a lot of just fun things that we just want to talk about and share our thoughts with the world. So thank you all for listening. That was a good explanation. What kinds of stuff will we talk about? I don't know, whatever we want. If
yep.
whatever you, the listener, wants. If you have a suggestion or a proposal, today we're going to talk a little bit of music, a little bit about movies, a little bit about ourselves, specifically our names. We're going to get into that a little bit later. That's going to be fun. But yeah, so maybe kind of like a pop culture focus. We might talk a little bit about our own personal experiences too. So yeah, and I don't know how much this will matter to listeners, but we're not going to get too explicit with this. We might drop the occasional F bomb or curse word, but I don't. We're not going to try. We're
Fuck.
not going to venture into. We're not going to be venturing into like hard R territory. So if there's any concerns about this being like not safe for work, I don't. I think we'll be fine.
We're rated PG-13 if it were a movie.
PG-13, yeah, like a hard PG-13,
Like as
maybe.
much as you could get away with and still be called PG-13.
We'll be pushing the boundaries
Like edgy
of.
but marketable.
Well said. Well said. That's a good. That should go if this ever gets published like on a platform. It should be like edgy, like marketable but edgy should be in the description of the podcast. That was really good. And as far as have we done this before? This actually is not my first podcast. Some people who are listening to this may know that I had a podcast with my fantasy football group. I That was my punishment for losing twice in a row. So for 2 years, I did a podcast where I would
Ooh.
interview other members of the fantasy football group, whoever scored the lowest points that week.
Like you were
I would
last
chat with them.
place 2 years in a
Like
row?
if you were, yes, I lost 2 years in a row.
Oh. But
Yeah,
okay, in
yeah.
fantasy
No,
football, do you actually try? Because I know in fantasy basketball, you sometimes don't set your lineups, or you rarely. I think
uh,
you only set your lineup when you play me because you don't want me texting you and you want to.
I'm a notoriously bad fantasy basketball player. I've had and a friend, one of my college buddies, call me out for not participating in that, and I actually ended up losing a fantasy basketball league too because I did not set any of my lineups ever. But yeah, but no, I did try. This
Okay.
was not for lack of trying because it was the punishment was fairly new to the league. The guy before me, the first person to lose the league, he had to do a stand-up routine as his punishment, and then unfortunately the pandemic happened, so he just did a little. We did it via Zoom instead of an open mic like was originally pitched. But then for me, we changed the punishment to a podcast, and I am told that I did so well that the podcast punishment is here to stay, at least for now. And I did not
Wow.
lose. I did not lose this past season, I have now 2 seasons I've gone without losing. So,
Did you make the playoffs?
um, no,
Oh, but you didn't get
no,
last place.
but
Okay.
I didn't get last place.
Either
Yeah.
of the last two seasons.
Um, so yeah, that's the extent of my podcasting experience. But enough about me. Any previous experience to share?
No, I've never done a podcast, so I mean, I guess you just set the expectations pretty high for you, but for me, I'm gonna be bad at it, just so don't judge me too harshly. And this is episode 0 for a reason. You know, we're trying it out. We're gonna see how it goes. We're gonna learn on the go, learn on the job, I guess I should say. And
Yeah, we're yeah.
so I've did in high school. We both did a radio show, so that's the closest I've ever come to a podcast. It wasn't a talk show though; it was just playing music and then some banter in between. And I had a morning show, like 6 to 8 in the morning, and students would often like listen to the show as they're driving into school, or parents were driving them to school or whatever. So I think we had a little bit of pressure to maybe do some like current events or stuff like that if the day called for it. But what
It was
about
BA Wednesdays,
yeah,
right?
BA Wednesdays?
The Wednesdays. Yeah, man, that was a classic. Oh man, those radio shows were fun, and they kind of, I guess, in the sense, they were almost like podcasts before podcasts because they really let us talk about whatever we wanted within reason, obviously, as long as we weren't violating FCC guidelines. But
What
and
was
then you
your
got to play
show?
whatever music you wanted. I had a few different shows. The first one, trying to get me to say the name on here, which I will. It was called Pasta with Rice. Sophomore year, that was with me and Matt Sue, our fellow student, and then the next 2 years, I started doing a show with Matt and Sarvin, but the fit just the 3 people show, I wasn't really feeling it as much, so I ended up splitting off and having my own show for the next 2 years called the Good Music Showcase. It's
Oh,
called the Good Music Showcase. I think it was called because we had what was the New Music Showcase on Tuesdays, and that was like a way for the station to show off new music it was adding to its library, and we also didn't have enough people to fill all the holes, all the slots that needed to be filled. So I was like, okay, well, that's the New Music Showcase, but what I'm going to play is actually good music. So that was my show, junior and senior year. Wow, I haven't thought about that in years. I don't. That's just had to like dig deep into the memory banks for that one, but that was fun. Radio was a good time, and I think you're accurate in saying that it probably has prepped us both for this moment. So without further ado, we should just get right into it. What do you say?
let's do it.
It's actually a great segue because our first topic is music.
Yeah,
Um,
let's hear it.
I don't.
What are we gonna talk about, Chris?
We're gonna start by talking about the basically what I think everyone's been talking about, even though it's been a few weeks now since the peak of the hype, and that is the Kendrick versus Drake beef. Um, it was amazing.
Yeah.
It was so much fun. It was so much fun. It was truly like a historic few days of hip hop. Like we have not seen like even when you look at like the biggest beefs in the genre, like Tupac versus Biggie, Nas versus Jay-Z, 50 Cent versus G Unit, we never had artists responding to each other so quickly or with such a level and severity of allegations. And it really did sort of take over not just music and not just hip hop, but really sort of all of everyone's attention, and that all that people were talking about for that one weekend was really this Kendrick Lamar versus Drake beef, to the point where even national news outlets are reporting about it because and I'm gonna back up. I don't get too ahead of myself, but like by the Monday and Tuesday after the last songs were dropped, everybody was talking about it for one reason or another. So, but really, I mean, if to I'm gonna try and quickly summarize this.
Good
It
luck.
really goes
Good
back
luck.
because it depends, right? Like how far back do you want to go? Do you want to go back to like the early days, like 2012, 2013? Because that's really when this all started. When Kendrick Lamar and Drake, they did a collaboration that was on Kendrick's debut album, Good Kid, Mad City, called Poetic Justice. And they have never collaborated since. And there have just been sort of like subliminal shots thrown at each other in the decade plus since that song was released. The biggest one was Kendrick Lamar's Control verse in 2013. And that was one that essentially Kendrick Lamar came out. It wasn't even his song. It was a Big Sean song, 7 minutes long. And Big Sean, he's rapping for like 2 3 minutes. He's got a great verse, and then all of a sudden Kendrick Lamar comes in, and he basically just takes shots at everybody. He has a line. He says, he name drops Drake, J. Cole, Mac Miller, Tyler the Creator, uh, Big Crit, I believe, just a bunch of different names, and is saying I love you all, but I'm trying to murder you all. Essentially, sort of throwing his cards down on the table and saying, "This is rap. This is competition. What are we doing? Like, let's compete." And a lot of people responded to that in songs. Drake did not respond in a song to that, but he did say in an interview, if I remember correctly, that basically like he and Kendrick are not competing on any level, like the competition is not there, basically insinuating that he's above that kind of beef. But the subliminals continued really for years after that. There was one. I mean, people have gone back and looked at Kendrick Lamar's verse on All the Stars, on the Black Panther soundtrack, where Kendrick Lamar is saying like, "I hate your I don't want your congratulations." And that they think that was in response to a post that Drake made about Kendrick Lamar's album "Damn" going #1, and that Drake like sarcastically was congratulating Kendrick for a #1 album, and so Kendrick was like dismissing him then. Kendrick Lamar had been pretty quiet since he dropped his 2022 album, Mr. Morale and the Big Steppers, which ironically was all about sort of self maturation and just embracing, a calmer, wiser self, and no longer trying to worry about fixing the rap game and fixing, animosity between black people. It was really just about him focusing on himself and recognizing his own generational trauma and solving his problems that he was going through at the time. Saying at the end of the song that he chooses himself, and he's sorry for anyone who was hoping for something else. So it stood to reason that after that album, Kendrick would not be going after anybody to the extent that he has. But things sort of, the real sort of, we didn't know it at the time, but the real kind of firecracker that set this all off was a song on Drake's most recent album in October of 2023, For All the Dogs. The song was called First Person Shooter, and it was a song featuring J. Cole. And J. Cole has a line in the song that essentially he alludes to himself, Drake, and Kendrick, or K. Dot as he calls them, as the big three. We're the big three of rap. And when that came out, I mean, it was pretty. No one really argued against it. It's kind of like, oh yeah,
Other people use
like
that
yeah,
phrase
this is all
too.
right.
He didn't necessarily pen it, right? It was like people on the internet would be like, "Oh yeah, like the big three," they'd refer to them that way, right? It was kind of like a um, popular opinion that they were the top three in the game. Is that where?
It was. I think it solidified what was already like a common sentiment, at least among a lot of rap fans, and just in terms of like who is selling the most and who has the most hype. Um, I think yeah, that was probably a pretty common sentiment going into that song. So people weren't really like the response wasn't like F you, J. Cole, like not like that's not the case, at least not right away. That though changed when Future and Metro Boomin released a song in
March.
late March,
Yeah.
early April. Yeah, I think it was late March, yeah. Called We Don't Trust You, and I think it was called We Don't Trust You. If I'm
I
if
thought it
I'm
was
wrong, I
called
apologize,
Like
guys.
That.
But The song was called
Oh,
like that.
oh, the album
So
was.
the
Oh,
song
okay,
was
my bad.
the song was called like that. All good, all good. The song was called like that, and there's no. And I hate when artists do this, but I can kind of see why they do it. There were no guests on the track list. So like when you're listening to the song for the first time on streaming, you don't know who's on it.
Oh,
You just see Futuro and Metro Boomin. So we're listening, and then like that, the song, which is like about maybe halfway through the album, has a surprise Kendrick feature, and Kendrick goes off essentially on Drake and J. Cole, and he has a line in there where he says, "Fuck the big three, it's just Big Me," and that was it was a very cool moment because we're all like, oh my god, like Kendrick is choosing violence. Like this, where has this Kendrick been for the past few years? He's coming out swinging. And it was quiet for like a few days after that release. I mean, I think people were kind of in shock because it was like a surprise verse on an album that didn't even belong to him. It was a Future album, but it also meant that in a way, like Future and Metro Boomin, people who have both collaborated with Drake several times, were kind of like co-signing this diss. So that was kind of interesting. Like, oh, where's this rift coming from?
I don't want
Um,
to get ahead, but that's
and it was
kind of been a common theme throughout this beef, right?
yes, it expanded to far beyond just Kendrick and Drake. But it was originally, yeah, Kendrick calling out Drake and J. Cole. So J. Cole, and it's so funny to look back now and like to see how this all started. J. Cole responded. He put out a mixtape called "Might Delete Later," which is already inspiring a ton of confidence in the listener. And then towards the end of the last song on the mixtape was a song called "7 Minute Drill," which was his diss track towards Kendrick. And as far as disses go, this one's pretty weak. Um, and I feel like, I mean, I don't know. Did you listen to it? Did you have any thoughts when you heard the J. Cole
Yeah,
diss?
and I'm not the best at like for one understanding lyrics, but then even when I do understand it, I don't necessarily get all the references. But I my most notable memory about that is he just went through all the Kendrick albums and was like, Good Kid, Mad City, we were all feeling you, and then your next the next few thing, to Pimp a Butterfly was like I think he dissed that one maybe the hardest, and then he said "Damn" was his best stuff, and then I don't remember what he said about Mr. Morale, but I just remember it was like bad somewhere between like like dissing some of them, like giving some of them props, and then um but just yeah, that was the line I remember the most. I forget exactly what the line was, but
Yeah, I remember he called "To Pimp a Butterfly" sleepy,
oh yeah, put people to
and
sleep.
that was just yeah. And I'm like, which was ironic because coming from J. Cole, one of the biggest critiques has been how boring his music can be. I mean, he literally has a song called "Folding Clothes," which is about folding clothes. And yes, I know it's a metaphor, but still, like that was so to use that criticism against him didn't really work. And you know what? I think J. Cole knew that just didn't work. I don't think his heart was never really in it because 2 days later he was at his Dreamville festival, which is his own festival that he's performing, and he basically comes on stage and apologizes, and he says like, "I'm sorry, like that was whack. I hated doing it. Like I love you, Kendrick," and he
He
removed it from
did
streaming
delete
services. So
later.
he deleted it. Yeah, the mixtape is still there, but that song, the Kendrick diss song, is literally gone. Like you cannot legally listen to that song now, which is. I mean, I feel like that's somewhere down the road we should talk about that and how like music has changed to where people can just like
Yeah.
change like edit and remove songs like that because that's crazy. But anyway, that was J. Cole kind of just
Do you think like
bowing out
he
of the
knew
disc.
what was coming and maybe even got some direct warnings like you're not going to want to be in this, or do you think he genuinely just regretted it, or do you think like cuz it's a little bit suspicious that the mixtape's called Might Delete Later, like he might have known that like I might regret this or I might just use this for publicity, or what do you one of those three things or something in between?
So there was a report that before J. Cole went on stage that night and apologized, like maybe hours before, like so like that same day, Schoolboy Q, uh, longtime collab, excuse me, longtime collaborator with Kendrick Lamar and who was on Kendrick Lamar's label for a very long time. Schoolboy Q apparently warned J. Cole about what was coming and was the one who sort of advised him to step out of the beef. And if you go back and watch, I mean, J. Cole, he almost seems like a little shell shocked when he did that. Like it just the whole thing was weird. I mean, he was clowned and memed pretty
Yeah.
hard for giving that speech on stage. But if you think, okay, if Schoolboy Q had just warned J. Cole, and then who knows, I don't know how far into detail they got. But I mean, if J. Cole is getting hit with like some, oh, here's what Kendrick is going to be saying, like, I think you really should step out, I can totally see why he would. So that was the report. I mean, so we can assume that something like that went down. I don't know if he really knew how deep the hatred was. I don't know if he would have ever come out with the diss. I think he approached like, oh yeah, we're just trading
Yeah, it's
shots,
all in good
like we're
fun.
just yeah, exactly, all in good fun. I don't think he really could have realized how far this would go. And it did escalate when Drake finally put out a diss, and this was days later, days after J. Cole apologized on stage. Drake put out a diss called "Push Ups," and "Push Ups." Well, actually, let me back up a little bit because before Drake put out his song "Push Ups," we did, as you mentioned earlier, after J. Cole apologized, a lot of people started coming out of the woodwork, like Rick Ross put out a diss song. I want to say it was called Champagne Poetry or Champagne something. The only noteworthy thing there is that he basically calls Drake a white boy over and over and over again. The Weeknd even came out with kind of dissing Drake. ASAP Rocky came out and had some words for Drake. Even Kanye West even did a freestyle over like that, or I guess I should call him Ye now. Ye even did a freestyle over the like that beat. I basically came out and said, "Yo, Dot, I got you," and did this verse that no one ever paid attention to ever again. And then when Drake came out with his song "Push Ups," it was kind of weird because he originally like it
Yeah.
leaked. It wasn't released to streaming, so people were kind of like, "Is this AI?
Uh-huh.
Like, what is this?" It was weird. And then another version came out leaked that was sort of cleaned up, and then it was finally released on streaming. Push ups. It was kind of just like he didn't throw a lot of shots at anyone in specific, but it was just kind of like he had a couple lines like, "What is this? Like a 20v1? Like everyone just needs to back off." So he sort of responded to a lot of the people who were coming at him at the same time. He also, he insinuated that Kendrick was not as good as like 21 Savage, like Travis Scott is doing better numbers, SZA is doing better numbers. He also, Push Ups made reference to Kendrick being short.
Splitting his profits,
And then there
right?
was
That was what
some,
the like
yes,
dropping.
yes,
Yeah.
drop and give me 50. Like dropping give me 50 push-ups, but actually is Drake getting like 50% of all of Kendrick Lamar's
Drake gets
sales.
50%.
So that
Uh
was part of it. So there's been a lot of speculation. One is that because Drake has invested a lot in certain music labels, including like the Interscope label, and Kendrick
uh
being signed to Interscope, was Drake actually making money off of Kendrick Lamar's album sales and streaming sales?
I
Um,
thought the doing
that
splits was
was
like
that was
with
speculated.
like Top Dog or like one of someone in Kendrick's own camp. He just like agrees to split 50% of the money with them, and then I thought Drake was like going at him like for that or something. I didn't realize Drake himself is getting the cut of the.
Well, we'll see. And I think that's part of it too, right? Is that no, like those allegations were never really addressed going forward. Like we never really got more clarification on what that meant. So I think I think the top dog thing probably makes more sense. I remember seeing the theory that Drake was getting 50% on X.
Mm.
I have no way of confirming that. But the point being that he was, I think it was like a double entendre, like dropping give me 50 push-ups, but also I'm getting 50%, or you're only getting 50%. So anyway, a pretty effective, feel like shot. I feel like it was catchy. Got a lot of radio play. It was a good response by Drake. I personally was surprised that he like went actually had a decent diss in him. And then Drake came out with another diss called Tailor Made Freestyle. Um, I will confess that I'd never actually listened to
What?
this one
You didn't want to hear
because
what AI
I didn't
Tupac
ever.
sound like?
Nah, man, that just gives me the
Yeah,
ick, man. I don't like the idea of just using AI
for
to.
art.
I don't know. It's funny. I think like I mean, there's a time and place for it. Like Kendrick Lamar, he used AI, like he used deepfake technology for one of his music videos called "The Heart Part 5." And that was really effective use of it, I thought, because he's talking about like he's rapping, and then all of a sudden he turns into Will Smith and has the line like, "Oh, I'm sick of hurt people hurting people," and you're like, "Oh shit!" Like that I thought was an effective use. I do think in one sense, Drake using an AI version of Tupac to diss Kendrick is effective because Tupac Shakur, like his legacy is very much rooted in Kendrick's music. The whole underlying theme of To Pimp a Butterfly is that Kendrick Lamar is having this conversation with Tupac from beyond the grave, so to speak. So I thought it was effective in that sense, and Snoop Dogg being like a West Coast icon, of
Also
course.
used AI Snoop, and
So
yeah.
yeah, I'll just use AI Snoop. So in that sense, I did think it was effective, but I don't know, something about that just kind of bothered me. And it also bothered the Tupac estate because they should have ceased and desist and got him successfully to take down the song from streaming services. So that's another song you cannot legally
And
listen
Drake
to
like
either.
later
But do you
claimed
have any?
that Kendrick wrote to the Tupac estate in one of the diss tracks in this beef. He said that Kendrick wrote to the estate to have him take it down. And also with the tailor-made freestyle, wasn't Drake kind of like taunting Kendrick for like a week, saying like, "What's taking you so long?" and like taunting his management or something, like saying like, "What are you guys doing? Like we've been waiting." And it was like a week, I think, right? I don't remember.
Basically, because I think at this point it had been so the Kendrick disc came out late March. It had been almost a
Oh,
month since we've heard from Kendrick after he put out all the initial shots. Like, because Kendrick never acknowledged the J.
mm-hmm.
Cole situation. That was kind of just like J. Cole putting his foot in his own mouth, at least to us, the viewers. And then you have other people coming out and dissing Drake. We had not heard from Kendrick. So, yeah, I think at that point it was kind of like, okay, like, is there more? Like, what's next? I mean, because we didn't have any idea what's coming. So that was a valid shot for Drake to take at the time. Also, just because in this world of like streaming that we live in, people expect like a
Instant
quick response
gratification.
in this digital age. Exactly. And that did finally come when Kendrick Lamar, the Savage, releasing a diss track on a Tuesday morning, Tuesday, April 30th, I believe it was, called Euphoria, a 6 minute track. Um, and I believe it's, yeah, 6 minute track, Euphoria, which is has a few different meanings. One being the name of the TV show that Drake is a producer on, the HBO show. And then in it, I mean, in it, Kendrick Lamar goes at Drake and doesn't really say anything new. Like he basically says like, oh, like, you're fake, like you're a deadbeat dad, like no one likes you. Like I believe that was the song where he says like, I look at you in sexy red and I see two bad bitches. So like you're calling Drake feminine. Um, but it was very well crafted and it was very well done. There's multiple beat switches in there. He went at Drake pretty hard. It was a good response to push-ups. So that comes out on a Tuesday. Any other Euphoria thoughts that you have?
He said kind of what you touched on, like the culture is not with you. We're not feeling you. It's not just me. I think that was in Euphoria. Um,
Mhm.
and then I mean I was laughing about I think Euphoria is the one where he was saying like kind of ended the song with like we don't want to hear you say N word no more, right?
Yes, we don't want to hear you say
Yes,
naysayer
that's
no
the one.
more.
So
Essentially,
it was just kind of like I think uh, definitely not like in good fun at that point, but like not to the levels that it got to. It was more just like kind of like you're not cool anymore. All of us, yeah, it's a 20 verse one, but like no one likes you and like we don't feel you and like maybe isn't that the one where he says like I want um Drake with the melodies or something. Like I want the singing Drake, basically.
Yes, yes, we want the yeah. I don't like you when you rap and you try and act hard. I like when you say I want you to make something for me to dance to. Yes, and yes, you also, as you mentioned, he has the great line about how like it's actually a 20. This is a 20v1. If I have to fight all of your ghostwriters,
Is that
right? That
he
was
says, "Am I battling Ghost or AI?" Right. Also,
yes, yes, yes,
so it's
yes.
like,
So yeah, it was yeah a great response. Definitely moving the beat forward. But yeah, as you said too, keeping it very much just on a strictly like rap level. We're not really getting too personal at this point. Um, and then we did not have to wait very long for the next response because 3 days later, Friday morning, Kendrick drops a song called 616 in LA, um, which the song itself, I mean, is pretty sort of a continuation of everything he said on Euphoria. There weren't really any new allegations or anything, but it was more like the presentation of the track, I think, that got more attention because the song was posted to Instagram with a picture of a glove, uh, which is which was seen as like maybe a reference to O.J. Simpson. As which was evidence during the trial. June 16th is also the day that Nicole Brown's funeral was held, I believe. Nicole Brown Simpson's funeral was on June 16th. And there were a few other, I think, people like, oh, like there's a Bible verse 616 that says something about like people being fake. So there are things like that. 616 in LA is also kind of a riff on a lot of song titles that Drake has, like 5 a.m. in Toronto, 9 a.m. in Calabasas, things like that. So that was, and in hindsight, that's I see that song kind of as more of like a warning shot for what was to come Friday night. I don't know if you have any other thoughts there.
well, yeah, because he said, "Have you ever thought that OVO was working for me?" So he kind of like foreshadowed to like you have like moles, or I don't know, like you have people in your camp who don't fuck with you, and they're like leaking me stuff, and like so you don't want to continue this because I like it was kind of like you were saying, like a warning shot, I think.
Essentially,
And then yeah, I didn't know all of those things you referenced about 616 or what it could possibly be referencing. And then like I get the OJ references, but what is the link between OJ and Drake, or is it just that they're kind of like these?
I don't know if there's a specific link to be drawn between the two, other than the fact that like you're a superstar celebrity and you're on trial. I think maybe the implication is that like Kendrick's putting
Yeah,
Drake on trial. Um,
like a super popular person, like well liked, who like very publicly becomes like not a likable person, something, maybe something like
Yeah,
that.
I think so. I remember. I mean, gosh, it was so much fun being on X, like when all this was coming out, because people were going wild with their theories. I wish would have to go back and like do more, like look more into that. But
Yeah.
it was a fun time, for sure. And it got so much more fun when so Friday morning, Kendrick releases 616 in LA. Friday evening, Drake releases Family Matters. And I think this is when things first really started to escalate because Drake basically in this song he claims that one of Kendrick Lamar's children is not his, that the child was actually Dave Freeze, who is a friend and I believe helped co-founded Kendrick Lamar's new label PG Lang. He also accuses Kendrick of beating on his wife Whitney, or excuse me, fiance, not wife, fiance, because as Drake also points out in the song, they've been engaged, they've been getting together since 2015, but still no ring. So I don't know what he was trying to insinuate there, but he's just kind of pointing that out. He continues to call Kendrick short. He says, you rep LA, but you moved out. You're living in New York now. What's up with that? But the lines about the child not being his and that Kendrick beating his wife and that he hired like a crisis management team to sort of remove those allegations. Those are the most damning accusations out of the song. And Drake also, it wasn't an entirely this wasn't an entirely Kendrick focused diss. Drake also took shots back at ASAP Rocky. Metro Boomin, and I believe
Rick
that's it.
Ross, is this the
Rick
one with the
Ross, yes, saying
Ozempic?
Ozempic was making him do things. So that was it was a good response. And I would be missed if I didn't mention the music video that also came with the song because the first like 2-3 minutes of it, the camera is following a van, which looks strikingly similar to the van that was pictured in and played a part in Good Kid, Mad City, Kendrick Lamar's debut album, the van that he borrowed from his mom. And the van is essentially seen getting towed to a scrapyard and then smashed. So that was also kind of part of the diss. And last thing that Drake did, so in his post announcing the diss on Instagram, he posted another song called Buried Alive Interlude Part 2, which was basically, it was kind of like a parody of a song called Buried Alive that Kendrick did on Drake's album Take Care. Um, which I guess actually that is the last time that they collaborated. I guess technically that came after Poetic Justice in 2012. But it was sort of like an interlude. Drake, they weren't really on the same song together, but and Drake was essentially rapping, pretending to be Kendrick Lamar, and Drake, referenced the fact that Kendrick once opened for Drake on a tour back in the day. So kind of just, suggesting like, without me, Kendrick, you wouldn't be where you are today. So that was
Is that the kind of like catchy one that goes like drop, drop? Is that what you're talking about?
uh which one?
It's like the Drake auto tune, and he's just like taunting him to drop.
I think that was push-ups where he's like
Oh,
drop,
okay, that's
drop,
what I
drop.
thought.
Yeah, the
Yeah.
the buried and alive one, that one was only posted to Instagram. So that was like,
Oh.
so you would have to go to his Instagram to see it. That was the one I liked it, and then you sent me a
Uh huh.
screenshot saying like, wow, dude, you like this?" And I was like, "Dude, I had no idea."
What
And
did I specifically say?
well, so you texted me after Meet the Grams come out. Should we move on to Meet the
Oh,
Grams?
okay.
Is that because this
Yeah.
is just like, this is when I think when Meet the Grams dropped is when everything changed. Is when the beef
Well,
changed.
hold up. Before we move on to Meet the Grams, when Family Matters dropped, like you said, it was a video, and that was a big part of it. It was 7 minutes, and I found most of the stuff I was finding out. Like I'd open Reddit on my phone, and I'd see like a new thing had dropped. But this one, like my wife and I are about to like watch something on our TV. My wife Judith, shout out Judith. We're about to like watch stream something, and I'm like waiting for her to do something, so I'm just like messing around on YouTube, and then I see this like first video top left, like first thing recommended to me. I think it said like 20 minutes ago, and it's like from Drake, Family Matters. I see the van, I think, in the thumbnail. I put it on, and then at some point in the 7 minutes, my wife is like ready to watch, and she's like, "How long is this? Like what?" Like she was getting a little like, "Can we be done watching this?" I was like, "No, like I'm not gonna, like this is intense." And like you were saying, like it was the same day as the last diss track came out. What was that, 616? And
Mm-hmm.
yeah.
616.
So yeah, just a little funny anecdote there, but yeah.
It, it's funny because yes, it was long and also had multiple beat switches. It was a good response to Euphoria, and I mean, it really was like a great diss. Like Drake really did like, and you could tell that like between the music video and like the production and everything and his different flows on the song, like it wouldn't surprise me if Drake and his team felt like they had a kill shot like here, like they were like this was it, and it was really good. Unfortunately for Drake and his team, a lot of that fire was snuffed out because less than an hour later, we're talking like 30-45 minutes, Kendrick releases another song called Meet the Grams. And this one, now the cover art is it's the same glove from 616 in LA, but the picture has been zoomed out. So we see there's like a t-shirt underneath, and there's an Ozempic prescription and another prescription, and they have Drake's name on it. So already we're kind of seeing like, oh my God, like as you mentioned earlier, Drake insinuated that someone in OVO was working for him. Like now we're seeing like receipts from Drake's. We're like, oh my gosh.
Literally.
And then when you actually listen to the, just the way it starts, like, so Meet the Grams. Drake's last name is Graham. Aubrey Graham is his name. The first line, Kendrick says, like, Adonis, like, I'm sorry that that man is your father. And you're just like, oh my God. Oh my God. He's rapping to each of Drake's family members, and he tells Drake's son Adonis that Kendrick says he's sorry his father is Drake, um, and like just listen to the song when you're 18, and then you'll understand everything that I'm saying. Uh,
Come to me, I can be a mentor for you.
exactly. He alleges that Drake is hiding a second child, a daughter, 11 years old, saying that you should be watching Frozen with your daughter and playing with her. He accuses Drake of being attracted to minors, basically accusing him of being a pedophile, saying that he and Harvey Weinstein should be sharing a cell, and that he's running a sex trafficking ring. He basically calls his parents, or more specifically his father, a deadbeat, like a deadbeat
Hmm.
dad who raised a deadbeat, and it is just oh, like this was so aggressive and personal, and it made it clear that like Kendrick genuinely hates Drake. And the beat was so hard. The
It was
beat by The
eerie and like
Alchemist. Oh my gosh, it was like
it
a
gave you
horror
like this
movie.
like yeah, exactly. Like a horror movie, and it just like made you feel like seedy and nasty, and like, but also like that was part of the diss. Like to me, probably the craziest diss track I've ever heard because it's so like personal and direct to his family, and just the going at the family to begin with in terms of like he's speaking to them in some cases like Adonis and Drake's mom. He's kind of like sympathizing with them maybe about their
Yeah, like
connection to
I'm
Drake.
sorry, it's not your fault. It's not your fault. This man's a deadbeat. Like it's
And
okay.
then with the dad, it's like obviously very aggressive, and then eventually builds up to dear Aubrey specifically, and he says
Hmm.
a bunch of stuff to him.
And then at the end where he's saying like you lied about this, you lied about that, and then the echoing "you lied" in the backgrounds. It's just like it's such a venomous song, and it really
Yeah.
is like it doesn't have as maybe doesn't have quite the same replay value that other songs in the disc do, but in this disc saga, but one of the hardest for sure. And I don't know where anyone really knew it was going to go from there because it was so. I mean, so Drake did respond in a way. He responded with an Instagram story saying, like, basically in response to the claim that he has a daughter. Drake is just like, nah, I ain't got a daughter. Nah,
Like
like someone,
laughing,
someone go
crying
find my daughter.
emojis.
Yeah,
Yeah, if anyone can
exactly.
find my daughter, let me know or
Yeah,
something. And then
exactly.
like you already mentioned this came out like an hour after Family Matters, but it specifically addressed things that were in Family Matters, which basically indicates that Drake knew what was coming, knew when it was coming, was prepared, which kind of substantiates that he did have someone from Drake's camp
Hmm.
leaking stuff to him, or it was like masterfully planned, I guess.
Yeah, it felt very calculated. And yes, any
Yeah.
momentum that Drake might have been able to gain with Family Matters was really snuffed out with that song. And Kendrick was not done because less than 24 hours later, he released the song Not Like Us. And this is, I mean, if you ask me, this is the best song of the whole entire beef by far. One of Kendrick's one of Kendrick's catchiest. Essentially the hit him up of our generation. Really feels like truly. Kendrick is very explicit when he's calling out Drake and his crew as pedophiles. He has the line "certified lover boy, certified pedophile." Drake, I heard you like them young. You better not ever go to cell block one. And then the line, my favorite line is when he says that Drake was trying to strike a chord. I guess it was probably a minor, and the way that he drags out minor is similar to the line from Family Matters when Kendrick says like, "Oh, like talking about Kendrick's sons, like that. I don't know, is that boy yours? I heard it was Dave Freeze," and he drug out the word "free." So Kendrick saying a minor and dragging out minor felt very similar to that. Kendrick also called out Drake's use of the AI Tupac, saying that you think the Bay Area is going to be okay with that because Tupac was born in Oakland. That Oakland show might be your last stop, so like don't come to the Bay. Um, and then he in the third verse he does a really excellent breakdown and metaphor of essentially comparing Drake Drake's use of Atlanta artists to how colonizers came in and utilized the natural resources to their benefit. So accusing Drake essentially of using artists like Future and Young Thug and Lil Baby to give himself more street cred or more drip and integrate him into a certain audience when needed. Really, very honestly, like masterfully done, I would say. And that, one of the biggest accusations Drake has faced is that he's kind of a culture vulture. And that verse really just kind of hit on that. So you've got the pedophile allegations, but also just the fact that he apparently sucks. So, and this is all done over a very catchy DJ Mustard beat, which is like another sort of response without even really saying it, because Drake was insinuating on Family Matters that Kendrick was like abandoning his LA roots. So then Kendrick responded with like one of the most LA songs possible that you can think of. Like people were crip walking to it that night, and the song has since gone number one. It's one of Kendrick's most streamed songs of all time already. So
It
just
was
an overall massive success.
it was on one of my favorite moments of this whole beef was when I heard "Not Like Us" on the TNT broadcast of the NBA
Yes.
playoffs, and then like the guys like Kenny and Shaq are like kind of like uncomfortable, like don't bring us into this, like. But yeah,
Yes.
now that you said the P word, should I read the actual text I sent you
Sure.
when you liked Instagram's post, Drake's Instagram post of Family Matters?
Sure.
I said, "Wow, dude, supporting pedos?" Question mark. And you said you should go on like it now. And that's all. Sorry.
Yes, and that's it. No, you're right. Yeah, we did. We had to some kind of support that claim that was made. But yeah, man. I mean, Not Like Us. I just like it's just it's so good. I love that song.
Yeah.
And then Drake did respond. Drake had one more response in him. He responded the next day, maybe about 24 hours later, called "The Heart Part 6." And this, I will say that the title is good. Like the title is smart because Kendrick has a running series of songs called "The Heart," and Drake kind of swooped in and kind of took "The Heart Part 6" before Kendrick could release his own version. So I do give him credit for that, but I feel like from there it's all downhill. Basically, I mean, Drake did deny the pedophile and grooming allegations, but he basically says his argument is that like he is too famous.
Yeah.
Like this couldn't be true because if it were, then like I would have been caught, which everyone knows is bullshit. He also insinuates that Kendrick Lamar's accusations are only because Kendrick himself was abused as a child, which is factually untrue.
But even
Because
if it were, I mean, it's a
even if it
weird
were, it's still
angle to
gross.
take.
That's a very weird angle to take. Actually, it's kind of gross and exploitative and kind of toxic. But the fact that like Drake, because he makes reference to a song called "Mother I Sober" that was on Kendrick's Mr. Morale album, saying, "Oh yeah, that's the song where you said you were molested," but like Kendrick explicitly says in the song that he was not molested. It was in fact his mother who was molested, and therefore, when Kendrick said that he wasn't being abused, she didn't believe him because of her own trauma. And that was instilling more trauma. So that was the whole point of the song, that Drake and his team just fucking missed entirely in that. So overall, it was very I thought it was a very poor diss. He also makes reference to Millie Bobby Brown, who, and it's been well documented that Drake had been friends with her for years before she turned 18. But funnily enough, Kendrick Lamar never once named her. So Drake almost like he didn't. I wouldn't say he outed himself, but he basically just says like what does he say? He says like
He in
I'd never
before'd him.
exactly he says like I'd never look twice at no teenager. So
Yeah.
but like you're not saying he wouldn't look once. He's saying he would look once. Like he didn't say he wouldn't look once, but he
I
just
didn't think about
said he
that.
wouldn't look twice. So
Yeah, this was a low point for me for for it. It was
yeah,
like it felt desperate. The you already touched on like he literally says, he's too respected to be a pedophile. I'm way too famous for the shit you just suggested, which is like, you know, obviously ludicrous.
Yeah,
Um,
gross.
and then doesn't he? It was what else? He says,
Yeah. He also says he claims that the part about the 11-year-old daughter, which was like one of the most potentially damning accusations that Kendrick made on Meet the Grams. Drake says like, "Oh, we fed you that information. Like
yeah, exactly. That's what I was
we
gonna
knew
say.
we had a mole. We knew
Which
we had a mole, and so we fed you that information to see if you would bite it."
Which was
Which
like
like
what the Drake fans were like conspiracy theorizing before he dropped this. Is like this was all part of his plan. He's gonna come out, and
yeah
it was like even before this dropped, it was like clear that that was BS because it's like if he wanted to do that, he'd drop it right away, or he would be ready for the like how Kendrick was ready. He'd also Drake would have been ready, and then he still takes that angle, which is probably like maybe he had the idea from these like conspiracy Reddits or whatever, and he was like, I'm gonna take that angle. Maybe some people will believe it, but it makes no sense. I think it might even be like. Uh, Provably false. So I thought this was like pretty. It just felt very desperate and almost like white flag. Well, not intentionally, like he was surrendering, but like Drake doesn't necessarily have to respond to this in order to have won this beef because this Drake just killed himself basically.
Yeah, it was definitely playing defense. Like it was all on the defense. He didn't have any new allegations or anything against Kendrick. And it killed. Excuse me, it did kill a lot of the momentum. I feel like because it was just so. I mean, the energy too was just very low. The beat was just very kind of downtrodden, and Drake's energy was low on it, especially after he came out so hot on Family Matters. So I think a lot of people wanted Kendrick to respond because we didn't want the beef to end, or no one wanted the beef to end with just this crappy song by Drake. But I think in a lot of ways there was really there were only so many places you could take it from there.
Yeah.
Like, and until someone starts coming out with actual receipts, like unless Kendrick finds a way to prove that the daughter is real or that he didn't beat his wife, and that the child is his, like I don't know, it seems like we kind of ran out of room. In hindsight, it seems like we ran out of places for the beef to go. So I do believe it is over.
I think that was a
And I,
great summary. Yeah.
yeah, I think Top Dog. He tweeted something about the battle being over, but
Oh yeah.
I do. I think it's over. I think Kendrick won. I think everyone would agree that Kendrick won. Um, I am dubious as to any sort of long-term effect this will have on Drake's career. That kind of remains to be seen because it's still pretty fresh. Um,
Did you have like a favorite moment from this beef?
Definitely when Not Like Us dropped.
Uh,
That was
yeah, I could
24 because
tell.
24 hours later, because Kendrick he had just gotten the last word in he had been the most recent to respond with Meet the Grams, so people were like, okay, like that was he had two disses in one day, 616 in LA and then Meet the Grams. So I think like everyone we just all thought that he was like out of the tank and he was done, but no, he was not even close to being done with Not Like Us. I still listen to that song to this day. Like it's so catchy. Like the verses are so good. His flow is great. I'm still picking up like new references. I feel like when I listen to it, like the colonizer, the like the oh shit moment of him calling Drake a colonizer is really effective when you actually like listen to what he's saying in his verse. It's very well done. So that was easily my favorite moment. Yeah. What was yours?
I think mine was Meet the Grams, just because of how it made me feel. Like was just like kind of nasty. Like this is like a whole different kind of diss track. And I was telling you, like my wife and I, we like watched Family Matters video. We streamed some TV for a few hours, and we went to go to bed. And then I'm like checking stuff on my phone, and and then I'm like, "Oh, babe, I'll be in the room in a few minutes. Like, I gotta listen to this." And then I'm just so like shook. Like it's at this point, it's like it was already pretty historic, but then like this point, it's like this could be the craziest moment in rap history. Not that
Yeah.
I'm an authority on that, but like this is absolutely nuts. And then that was when I had to like give my wife like the summary and the like, wow, you were not going to believe what's going on with Drake and Kendrick. And then I did my best to summarize it, nowhere near as well as you just did, but yeah, I think that was my favorite moment. I also really liked the Metro Boomin, perhaps the first ever diss beat, because
Yes.
I yeah.
Baby, I'll Tracy.
I
Baby, I'll Tracy. So good.
yeah, I just I like producers getting involved and um, but what
As a fellow producer
I
yourself.
wasn't gonna say that. I was gonna make the claim. My stuff is very amateurish, and most of it's dubstep, but and that's a thing of the past. But what do you think is going to happen moving forward to Drake? Like, you think he can recover? You think this could end his career? Do you think he could even, excuse the voice crack? You think he could even like end up facing like actually going the OJ route and having some kind of legal ramifications, or like what? Where do you think this is headed for Drake?
It's hard to say. I don't foresee this having a significant impact on his career. I do think it might make some artists more leery of working with him. Like, I don't see any collaborations with Future happening anytime soon, for example, or any of the artists that that he had beef with. Like the Rick Ross part of it too. Like, people were kind of speculating early on that this was all like the Rick Ross part was promo for like an upcoming album. It doesn't really feel real. But I don't know, man. I just don't. I feel like the industry in general tends to overlook and even embrace people with questionable, accusations and allegations, and as well as like known documented abusers. And I mean, I think it's kind of timely. We can look at the Diddy example. Like, Diddy had a lot of smoke surrounding him for decades, but it's only just now in 2024 that things are actually coming to light. Including some very disturbing video that just came out yesterday. So I don't foresee anything short term happening to Drake. Long term, maybe. Kendrick alluded in one of the songs that there was going to be like a raid on his house, similar to how Diddy's house was raided. I mean, we'll see. We'll see. I am not, and I don't want to say optimistic, like, and because if I say like I'm optimistic, that means like I want something to happen to Drake, and I don't necessarily I don't want that to happen to him necessarily. But if Drake is in fact, running a sex trafficking ring, I would hope that is brought to light. But that's something that would take years and several, a large body of work by whatever federal agency wants to take that on. So I don't think much is going to happen to him.
You think
short
it's
term,
not
long term, we'll see.
since it's not career ending, it's not cancel. It's not going to cause him to be canceled, and I think you're probably right on that. But I do also think there's a good chance he's kind of like a laughing stock now in some ways. Like, I don't. It's hard for me to see how he can recover. I guess in the eyes, maybe like the mass public will still think of him as a pop artist or whatever. But I guess people who are like more serious hip hop fans, let's say, like it's does it could I could definitely see him not being in these big three like labels anymore and stuff. But I'm pretty ignorant, so I should give that caveat. I'm not like I might not even I like hip hop a lot. I like rap, but I might not be the most like learned fan. So
do not sell yourself short, sir. Do not say that about yourself. No, but I mean, yeah, the general public. I mean, we'll see if he comes out with like a catchy song months down the road. I'm sure it'll be successful, and like he still has a very hardcore like group of fans. I think if anything, the people who consider themselves like really really close like and significant Drake fans, it might be even bigger fans now because they're just going to kind of like say they're going to stick with their boy no matter what, and they don't believe any of these allegations. So
crazy.
I don't know. Yeah, we'll see where it goes. The dust in terms of the beef has definitely settled, but I think it'll take some time before we see the true long-term effects.
I want to hear before we end this segment of the pod. I want to hear about your history with both Drake and Kendrick, and I can give mine too about like when did you first hear Drake, when did you first hear Kendrick, and how has your fandom of each developed over the years, that kind of thing.
Hmm. So I think Drake has been around longer than Kendrick. The first Drake song that I think I heard was actually it was a mashup. He had a song called Replacement Girl, Drake with Trey Songz back in like 2007.
Crazy.
And there was like I remember like a mashup that I found somewhere. I know this was like pre I don't even remember where I saw it. This was like pre-hype machine. Maybe it was LimeWire where I
You
saw it. I
were
don't
all
even
up
remember
on the
where the
blogs
song
and
came
stuff.
from. Early on, I was an early adopter of the music blogs. I think that was the first Drake song, and then Best I Ever Had came out, and they
Oh yeah.
Thank Me Later, and that whole era. So that was like sophomore, junior, senior year of high school, and then uh, Drake's Take Care came out fall 2011. Oh wait, so no, I'm sorry. I said something earlier that was incorrect. I said that the Buried Alive song came after Poetic Justice, but it didn't. It came out before. It came out fall 2011. Kendrick Lamar's album Good Kid, Mad City didn't come out until 2012, the next year. But Drake was, I mean, I liked Drake, his early stuff. Thank Me Later. That was like kind of mid. Came out around the same time as Eminem's Recovery album, and I liked Recovery a lot more. But those are both kind of like sort of soundtracks to that summer going into senior year and then senior year of high school. I think I kind of stopped listening to Drake. I stopped following Drake as closely after Views came out in 2016 because that was a very hyped album. At that point, Drake was coming off of his mixtape. If you're reading this, it's too late, which was like probably his most rap focused project today and had some of his best songs, in my opinion, up to that point. So there was a lot of hype for his album Views. Views from the Sixes, speculated to be called for a long time, ended up being Views, dropped in 2016. I thought it was bloated. Thought it dragged on for way too long. A lot of the songs sounded very samey. It was kind of a disappointing album, and so I haven't bought a Drake album since that was the last Drake CD that I bought. And the albums that I have like kind of looked into, since then they all have been sort of that similar, just like bloated, overlong songs. He's still good for bangers. He's put out a lot of catchy
Very
songs since
commercial
then.
pop, kind of like on.
Very
Yeah.
commercial pop, yeah, like pop rap songs. He dabbles into like R&B. He dabbled in like dance hall with that album. Honestly, Nevermind. That was also kind of mid, but I don't know. I've definitely sort of fallen off the
The
Drake
internet definitely
wagon.
does him some favors with the advertising. Like, what was the song called with the like challenge with the Kiki? Do you love me? That thing went
Oh,
crazy
yo, yeah, In
viral.
My
Yeah,
Feelings,
in my
yeah, yeah.
feelings.
He's very, yeah. He knows how to make a hit, and he knows how to get people talking about him. That's probably one of the reasons he's been able to stay in the spotlight for so long, even when the music itself is not, in my opinion, like amazing. So yeah, you have to give him credit for that. Whereas Kendrick Lamar, he really has been the opposite, just been kind of only focused on music. He wasn't really Kendrick. I didn't really. The first time I'm trying to think I listened to like picked up on Kendrick, I think was freshman year of college.
Same.
Excuse me, freshman year of college. He dropped his album Section 80 that I listened to, and I saw him the summer after freshman year at a concert in Washington. It was one of those like when like a local rap station does like, oh, it's like Summerfest or like Block Jam or Block Party or whatever, and it's just like a bunch of artists in one day. So this is so funny because this was June 2011. Kendrick Lamar was the third artist to play, and usually like the artists like as we get later in the night, the artists are bigger in popularity. So I think it went like Kid Ink was the first artist, and then E40, and then Kendrick Lamar, and then Big Sean, and then a couple other artists after that. Rick Ross was there. Tyga. The headliner was Wiz Khalifa.
Dang.
So in summer of
Sign of
2011,
times.
Wiz Khalifa was like the biggest name, and Kendrick Lamar, because Kendrick hadn't even dropped Good Kid, Mad City yet. He had like one album and I think one mixtape to his name, and he didn't play High Power, which was my
Oh
favorite song.
no. It's
So I was
catchy.
like, I remember there was a guy nearby who was like, if he doesn't play High Power, like I'm not a Kendrick fan
Oh
anymore.
no.
And he didn't play High Power, And both me and this other guy looked at each other like what was that? So yeah, didn't really have that strong feelings of Kendrick at that point. But then that all changed when Good Kid, Mad City dropped in fall of 2012. That was just like that was an incredible album. And then ever since then, it's just been banger after banger with the albums. To Pimple Butterfly dropping, in the 2015, Damn in 2017. He was all over the Black Panther soundtrack, and then the Mr. Morale 2 years ago. When Kendrick drops, it is like an event. Like I think you kind of just have to stop and listen to it because his output is so few and far between nowadays. It's sort of, and he has found ways to sort of change, like influence and change the genre. Like his music is genre bending. Like Mr. Morale, like no one is making songs like Mother I Sober or We Cry Together. We Cry Together, or even a song like that, I mean, is reminiscent of like Kim by Eminem from 2000, but just sort of like in a modern setting. And or Auntie Diaries on Mr. Morale is another one. We're just like talking about like no one in rap is or was talking about trans people and trans rights the way that he was on a song like that. So he's probably one of my favorite artists to right now, like making music right now. I'll probably put him in my top three.
For a sustained
I just
period,
think this catalog deserves it. For a sustained period, I would say definitely, yeah. So if my bias in this beef was not apparent before, it should be now.
Yeah, I was gonna say, judging by your shirt, it's fair to say that you're a big Kendrick fan, I guess, to summarize.
Yeah, that was intentional.
And then on
Yes.
Drake, you're like kind of have been a fan throughout the years, but also kind of like, I guess I don't want to put words in your mouth, but also kind of aware that he's a little corny or like commercial or like
yeah,
a little cringy at times.
Yeah, I mean, I loved Drake in like 2011, 2012, like Take Care, his second album. I loved that album. I haven't listened to it in a long time, but I still go back, or if I were to go back, I think I would probably still find a lot to enjoy there. I know his sound has evolved a lot since then, but like Take Care was probably one of my favorite albums of that year when it dropped. I thought that was really good. So, but just I don't know, he's kind of stopped. I don't know if he just stopped evolving, or I think he just kind of maybe got a little lazy, and just he realized enough to try as hard to and make can make the same sounding song and still be successful.
Make the same amount of money or more. Isn't one of your brothers like Johnny? Isn't he a huge Drake guy?
He was. I don't think he's as big into music now as he used to be. He definitely was in college, and like growing up, he was a big Drake fan. He was a huge Akon fan growing up, and then that kind of I think evolved into into him being a Drake fan because Akon stopped really making as much music. But yeah, no, he I don't think he really follows music quite the same way. And then my youngest brother Michael, him and we caught up recently and talked a lot about this beef, and we were both very much Team Kendrick.
Okay, let's go. Good job, Michael.
Yeah, yeah. Over a Mother's Day weekend, we talked about the beef a lot. Yeah, and it was funny. Michael's like trying to explain it to my dad, and my dad was like, cool, like like I'm good. This is more your generation, like I don't really need to hear.
Yeah, I wonder if all of our older listeners have tuned out by now. An hour into the pod, they're just like, I don't know what they're talking about. I don't care. But that's all right. We're keeping you guys informed. Mostly Chris is. I'll quickly do my Drake Kendrick history before we sign off this segment, but I forgot about Best I Ever Had, but I think that must have been the first time I heard Drake. I was thinking it was Forever. Is that the name of the song?
Forever, oh yeah, with Eminem,
yeah,
Lil Wayne, Kanye, yeah. Forever, that was a good one.
But yeah, I mean, my early memories of Drake were all like he was in the like Lil Wayne crew, I guess, coming up around the same time as like Nicki Minaj. Like Lil Wayne was hugely popular in like 2009, 2010-ish, and like he was kind of putting them on and like advertising, promoting them or whatever, and he was like in that crew. And then within a few years, he was obviously like on the same level or surpassing Lil Wayne. I was always kind of like, I wasn't super informed, but I was always not like anti Drake, but just like, oh, like he's so like, I kind of had like a hipster take on him. Like, oh, everyone loves Drake, so I'm not gonna love Drake. Um, but then, so for we went to college in 2011, and I didn't know who Kendrick Lamar was until Good Kid, Mad City. And at this point, I was very much like into electronic music, as we hinted at earlier. I was like making dubstep at this point in time, and so I was all like into that stuff. And like I had always liked rap, like not always liked it, but it wasn't like what I was listening to at that point in time. But one of my close friends, Ian, was like was and still is like Kendrick super fan, and when Good Kid, Mad City came out, he was just like going crazy and like like so stoked, and because like you were saying, it was like uh, I guess coming on the heels of right after Section 80, which was like really popular, but it was just a mixtape.
Mm-hmm.
So Ian put me on to Kendrick, and then my freshman year roommate Cleaver and I were listening to Good Kid, Mad City, not just like every day, but like multiple times a day. And listen, it was like almost like a movie where, like, obviously we're not listening to it on shuffle. We're listening to the story. You got to listen to that album that way. Like most albums, I guess. But like it was like this almost like theatrical event for us, and it was like every day we were listening to it, and then a few hours would go by and we listened to it again, and it was yeah. And so and then I've been like, Kendrick's been, I think, ever since been like in like my favorite rapper in the whatever the top 2 or 3 category is for me.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, so and then in I actually didn't really listen, and maybe even to this day, maybe I'm a little embarrassed to admit this, like haven't totally listened to Pimp a Butterfly. Don't yeah. My bad.
I'm leaving. I'm leaving.
No,
We're ending the podcast.
don't leave,
Leave the
dude.
studio.
Don't
I'm
leave.
done. Bro, okay. Well, your homework.
Yeah.
Your homework then today, you gotta do it. It's long, it's a little long, but it's an amazing album. It really is a good listen. So you've listened to some of it though, just not all of it?
Yeah, definitely. And I had plans to listen to all of it on a plane, and I just like fell asleep. And then like I've listened to bits and pieces, but I've never done like the like listen through uninterrupted of that album. And then in 2017, I think Damn came out, and my aforementioned friend Ian and I were doing like a trip meetup. He's from the East Coast. We were in LA the day that it dropped, and we were just driving around LA, which is a good match for a Kendrick album, like listening to Damn. Then we went back up to Northern California, and we're again kind of like the Good Kid, Mad City launch. We were just listening to it like all the way through, multiple times a day. And Ian, kind of like you, is like all up in the blogs and like the internet discourse and stuff. So like within a week or so, I think, of Damn coming out, there was all these, not even conspiracy theories, but there was like certain parts you could listen to backwards. The album as a whole you could listen to in the reverse order, and it had like a different narrative and stuff. So like I'm all about like that kind of like the fact that there's these not like I guess hidden meanings and like different ways to interpret it. But yeah, I mean, I'm a huge Kendrick fan, even though, like I said, I'm maybe a little bit ignorant as far as rap fans go, but definitely more into Kendrick than Drake, like you said. Or like,
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I don't know I think you're selling yourself a little short. I think that's part of the beauty of music, is that you can consume it any way that you want to, and there's no right or wrong way. It's whatever,
true.
however it makes you feel, and however you want to go about it. There are no rules per se. I subscribe to the same theory you do of like listening an album from front to back and just kind of devoting your attention to that album is like a very integral part of sort of the listening experience. But I mean, to each their own.
Yeah.
Like there's no right or wrong answer here. So, but I am going to ask that you listen to
Yeah, I
Chicken
gotta
Butterfly,
do it.
because that is
Pretty
good listening.
embarrassed to admit it. I think
You're among friends here.
I think a good maybe ending point for this. I think I've said that a few times now, but I mean it this time. For this Kendrick Drake discussion is that buddy Ian of mine. Like I was saying, we loved Good Kid, Mad City, but he was like a huge hater of Poetic Justice, specifically Drake's part. And then I was saying, like I wasn't really a big Drake guy, but I was like, Ian, like, why are you such a hater on Drake? And he was like, oh, he's just garbage. Like, he has no substance. I don't remember what his argument was. But then, like, we, in that discussion, we're like, he was like, just put on Poetic Justice. Let's just listen to Drake's part right now, and you tell me what's good about it. And then, like, I came around right away. I was like, oh, yeah, you're right. This is the clear weak point of this amazing album. So would it be okay with you if I ended by reading Drake's verse in poetry form?
Please. In poetry form. Oh, yes. Even better. Let's go.
Okay. I really hope you play this, because, old girl, you test my patience. With all these seductive photographs and all these one-off vacations you've been taking, clearly a lot for me to take in. It don't make sense, young East African girl. You too busy fucking with your other man. I was trying to put you on game, put you on a plane, take you and your mama to the motherland. I could do it, maybe one day. When you figure out you're gonna need someone, when you figure out it's all right here in the city, and you don't run from where we come from. That sound like poetic justice? Poetic justice? You were so new to this life, but goddamn, you got adjusted. I mean, I write poems in these songs, dedicated to the fun sex. Your natural hair and your soft skin and your big ass and that sundress. Ooh, good God. What you doing that walk for? When I see that thing move, I just wish we would fight less and we would talk more. And they say communication save relations. I can tell. But I can never right my wrongs unless I write them down for real. P.S.
The dedicated to the fun sex line that got me. And you know what? It occurred to me while you were reading that, another element to the whole Tupac part of the beef. Poetic Justice was a 1993 movie starring Tupac and Janet Jackson, and Janet Jackson is sampled on that song.
Oh.
So that's the whole, and that their last collab had like the specter of Tupac hanging over it.
Crazy.
And that was
beautiful. Would you say?
You for sharing. I would say that was beautiful. Yeah, a good note to end that on.
I really hope you play this, cause oh girl, you test my patience with all these seductive photographs and all these one-off vacations you've been taking. Clearly a lot for me to take in, it don't make sense. Young East African girl, you too busy fucking with your other man. I was trying to put you on game, put you on a plane, take you and your mama to the motherland. I could do it, maybe one day, when you figure out you're gonna need someone. When you figure out it's all right here in the city and you don't run from where we come from. That sound like poetic justice. Poetic justice. You were so new to this life, but goddamn, you got adjusted. I mean, I write poems in these songs dedicated to the fun sex, your natural hair and your soft skin and your big ass and that sundress. Ooh, good God, what you doing that walk for? When I see that thing move, I just wish we would fight less and we would talk more. They say communication save relations, I can tell, but I can never right my wrongs unless I write them down for real. P.S.